Well, welcome everybody. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces here, and as always, we want to welcome you to our 2013-14 speaker series, and we appreciate your support in coming out today, and we think we've got some great programs lined out for you, and I think you'll find them interesting and diverse, and we hope you'll have as many questions as you answers by the time you leave here today. So, again, welcome. For those of you who have not had a chance to meet, my name is Ray Tomiski. I'm president here at Jefferson College, and as always, it's a great honor to kick off our series this year with a program that's kind of close to home in a couple ways. Location certainly, but also in terms of our speaker today is the father of one of our employees, and so we're getting double duty here. We get a great speaker, and Sherry got to have dinner with her family. So, you know, sometimes it's a double win. Well, our speaker today is Colonel Jim Bell, who was born during Depression, and believe it or not, is one of 14 children. It could be worse, honey. We're gonna watch that. He grew up in on the Bell Mountain Wilderness area in the Ozarks, which is so named because his family once lived and farmed the ridge along the mountain. Now, Bell Mountain is located within the Potosi-Fredericktown Ranger District of the Mark Twain National Forest, which is south of Potosi. Bell Mountain Wilderness is part of the large Parks and Wilderness area, which includes Johnson Shut-ins, Thomas Hawk Mountain State Park, and several conservation areas. Now, while Colonel Bell served in the U.S. Army during the Korean War, he received the title of colonel at Auctioneer School over 45 years ago. And we went straight to the deep source here. According to Wikipedia, this is the source of all information now, during the American Civil War, goods seized by the armies were sold at auction by the colonel of the division. Thus, some of today's auctioneers in the U.S. carry the unofficial title of colonel. So our colonel, Jim, and his wife, Faye, have lived in Jefferson County since 1961, and they currently reside in Peevely. They have 3 children and 4 grandchildren. Jim wrote his biography, Growing Up in the Ozarks, the Iron County Kid, so that future generations would know his life story. Today, Jim is going to share information and stories about his life growing up in Iron County, near Bell Mountain Wilderness during the Great Depression. So if you'll help me welcome Colonel Jim Bell.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure proud you came out to listen to me today. I hope I'm not going to disappoint you. I especially want to thank Miss Maupin for inviting me and giving me this privilege to share a few things of how life was in growing up. But after that talk that the gentleman made just ahead of me here, I don't know if I need to say any more. I might should leave well enough alone. But I'm Jim Bell. I live over Peevely, Missouri, as he said, and we've had the auction business for 45 years at Peevely, and then we auctioned all over throughout the country, counties, Iron, Dent, Reynolds, and St. Louis, Illinois, and all of that. And but after, you know, steak is good, but one will do you. The auction business was good, but one time through it for 45 years was enough. Amen? Thank you. But anyhow, I want to share some of the things about me growing up. First, I'd like to say I'll get to these pictures a little bit later and tell you what they are and why they are, and how come me to have them. So that'll come a little bit further down the line. To kind of bring you up to speed on how the Bells came into this part of the country. There was 4 Bell brothers came out of the country of Scotland into what is now the state of Virginia. And one of them went back up into Canada. He wanted into the fur trade because furs were very much in demand, not only in our part of the country, but in the European world. Fur was a great thing. And one of them migrated into Canada, and the other 3 went westward on through Kentucky, Tennessee, and then eventually on into Missouri, where my great-grandfather, I believe it was, that's what was handed down to me, homesteaded 287 acres at the foot of the Bell Mountain, which is now, as the gentleman said here, is called the Bell Mountain Wilderness. It's a park. You can go to it sometime and see the mountains down there. My father grew up on this parcel of land, and there's several little different stories I'd like to tell, so I hope I don't bore you. If I do, I'm sorry. I'm going to tell this little story here about my grandfather was wakened one morning about 3 o'clock in the morning. The dogs were setting up a howl, and he didn't know what was going on, and he run out to look, and he saw a figure of a cat going big, run away. He had caught a lamb and couldn't get it through the fence, and he had to drop it, and he went on and caught a pig, and the pig started squealing. That's what caused all the noise, and he run off. But at daylight, my grandfather got the dogs and grabbed his rifle, and they went up Joe's Creek Holler to see what this was. And the dogs got ahead of him, and they made this big cat up on a leaning tree, coal black, green eyes, hissing down at the dogs, making all kinds of noise. Anyhow, my grandfather was nervous, as he would be seeing that cat that big, and when he put the rifle up, he'd only taken 3 shells, and put the rifle up, he was nervous and he missed. And he knew he had to settle down a little bit, so he did settle down and pull the trigger, and he said that time the cat fell out and hit the ground like an elephant. And he went home and got the wagon and team and went back and got this and brought him back home. People come from miles around to see this cat, and he measured 9 foot from the tip of his nose to the tip of his tail. So you can understand what kind of animals were roaming in the Bell Mountain back in the 30s. There's not any, I don't see any down there anymore, so maybe they was like we was, they starved out when we was growing up in the 30s. Anyhow, my father grew up on this parcel of land, and he got into the timber business. Timber was a great thing back in that day and time, of course. Hub mills were all over the country, and he got into the timber business, and it was successful, so he acquired the general store there at Edge Hill. And post office. They had a branch of the post office, and that post office was like, you saw the Waltons, how they go up there to get their mail. That's the way the post office was in my dad's store. He went there and asked for their mail, and he handed it out to them. And everything was going good. Like I say, he got into the timber business, and then he went ahead and acquired the post office building and the general store. And things continued to go good, and there was a farm that went with this place. So he decided to buy it on paper, and he did. And this lasted till the 30s hit. And when the 30s hit, and the hub mills and the wagon mills and so on, everything was shutting down. The timber business went south. Didn't have anything to bring money in. And that day and time, the credit, and some of you are acquainted with it, you bought your groceries or whatever today, and next Saturday you come in and paid your debt. Well, it got to where they stopped coming in and paying the debt. And this kept going on until finally he had no money to save the house, save the store, or save anything. And the man at the county seat wanted his money. And he brought the sheriff out there with 2 men. This is down in right on the Arn and Reynolds County line, if you're wondering what I'm talking about. He brought the sheriff out, and they set everything we had that we owned out in the road ditch and foreclosed on it. And now you can kind of imagine the scene there, and I'll get to that a little later on. Let me tell you how he come to meet my mother. Back in those days, they had the old wall telephones, and I'm sure you saw them, and they'd crank it up, and it was a short or a long, or 2 shorts and a long, or 2 longs, and that was your ring, and you went and answered it. But everybody up and down the valley, quick as it rang, they run and grabbed it, so that they'd know what Sarah was doing, and Miss Ellie, and all, and get all the latest gossip. So I don't know if my dad was listening or not, but he heard a young lady's voice. He said that he just liked real well, and he inquired around who she was and where she lived, and he found this out. He saddled his horse, and he went calling on this young lady, and he told her what he'd come for to court her. And this worked out all right, and he courted her for a short while, and then they decided to get married. She was 18, and he was 28. Young couple, and to this union, including me, was 14 children. There was 2 sets of twins, a set of twin boys older than me, and a set of twin girls younger than me. And all the clothes were made out of feed sacks and flour sacks and whatever hand-me-downs you could get. But anyhow, the times was tough, and we lost everything we had. And they set our furniture and everything we owned out in the bar ditch. But while things were going, let me back up just a minute. While things were going good, my mother wanted a pump organ. And she talked my dad in notion of ordering one out of a wholesale house in Chicago. And he did. And they brought that organ down there, big old high-back organ, pump organ, and he brought it down there on the train that came into Middlebrook, Missouri. I'm sure some of you heard of Middlebrook. That was a train station, depot down there in Iron County. Anyhow, they notified him that his organ was there. So he took the wagon team and went all the way to Middlebrook and got that organ and brought it back and set it up, of course. And this was the pride of the community. But anyhow, as time went along, my dad was losing everything that he had. And like I say, he heard this young lady's voice and he wanted to get married. And they got married, and as I said before, 14 children. But things kept going south and kept going south, and he lost everything he had. And anyhow, he decided, he'd heard that they picked cotton in Kennett, Missouri, and you could get a cent a pound for it. And he got the idea, he had an old Buick car, big old Buick car, and he cut it down and built a camper on the back of it, what we call a camper this day and time. And he had two little windows, one on each side, and he was going to go to Kennett, Missouri, and pick cotton. We loaded a 2-cap cook stove in it, all the quilts, pots, pans, and 10 or 12 kids, and headed for Kennett, Missouri. And you can imagine what a wild-looking thing that was, going down the highway. It wasn't popular back at that day and time. He was going up the hill there, and the engine died about 10 miles from home. And he hollered from my brothers to scotch the wheel because I can't hold it, I'm rolling backward. Well, they couldn't get out and get the wheel scotched, and it hit the ditch and turned over. With 10 or 12 kids, a 2-cap cook stove, quilts, pots, pans, dishes, everything else. The only thing I can really remember about that, I thought that my older brothers and sisters was holding, you know how kids will play, they'll hold something over your head. I thought they was holding it over my head. But anyhow, we crawled out, and not a one got hurt. Not one kid got a scratch. Got us back home, how I don't remember, don't know. Got us back home, and he decided to put new brakes on this vehicle and fix it up a little bit. And he said, we're going back to Kennett. But he said, this time it's only the older boys I'm taking with me. Well, that let me out. I didn't get to go. And he headed for Kennett and went down there. And the price of, like I say, I think it was 1 cent a pound for cotton. But that was a bad venture because he didn't make no money. He probably didn't pay for the trip hardly. So I'll get caught up here now in a few minutes. So they set my dad's merchandise out in the ditch. And a neighbor up the valley came by, and he said, Dick, where are you going to go? Dad said, I'm homeless. I don't have no place to go. I've lost a house. I've lost the post office. I lost the store. And I lost the farm. I've lost everything. I don't have nothing left. And this gentleman up the creek said, well, I got an old house on my place, Dick, up the valley here, that you're welcome to it if you'd like to move in. He said, it isn't much, but he said, you're welcome to it. And Dad said, John, it will look like a mansion to me. And he helped us with his wagon and team and moved our stuff up to the old house, including a pump organ. But the old windows was broke out, and it was a sorry mess, but it had a tin roof on it to where we could stay dry. And time went on, times got a little better, and they went ahead, and the WPA came through, and some of you folk I'm sure can remember the WPA. You know what they said about the WPA, don't you, the title? Is we piddle around. I didn't work on it, so I don't know. But anyhow, he got on the WPA, and they paid $2.40 a day. It was a government program, and this was unbelievable. The amount of money that we had. Now we could buy flour and sugar, and we didn't have to make our own cornmeal or whatever. This was a great treat. But that was in the late 30s. My mother got sick in 1940, and my dad had my brother to run to the neighbors as fast as they could and they had a vehicle and we didn't, to get his truck and come over and take my mother to the hospital. She was bad sick. And they did, and they took her to, I believe it's St. Mary's in Ironton, and they took her there, and the next morning at 8 o'clock she passed away. So here was he had a house full of kids, stair-stepped, not a window or anything to do with, but we done the best we could. And that year it was, we were so poor that Dad wouldn't let us start to school. He said, wait till next year and maybe we'll have better clothes and shoes to wear. And that wasn't real bad for me because that made it come out to where I was eligible to start school. Now, I was 7 years old. And you see this picture here, one of them. On the front of the book is a picture of me when I was 7 with a homemade shirt on and whatever else that was handed down to me. And then these pictures here, I'll explain them now. So the first day of school, the teacher called us all in and started giving us instructions about to do this and do that and all this. And anyhow, he finally said, now if you will come to school every day, neither be tardy or absent for the full school term, I will give you a silver dollar. Well, I'd never hardly heard of a silver dollar. That was the greatest thing. Man, I tell you what, it looked like it was big as a wash tub. And I didn't know what to do with it. I went home, and there was a little old catalog that used to come out from Chicago, and some of you might be old enough to remember it. National Bella Hess? Nobody. Okay. You do, ma'am. I'm glad you do, because they know I'm not lying. Down in the lower right-hand corner, there was a little boy's picture there. He had on blue trousers, a white shirt, and a red necktie. Boy, that was the sharpest thing I ever saw in my life. And I looked to see how much it was, and you know what? 97 cents. 3 cents postage, 3 cents tax, and there went my silver dollar. So I debated that and debated it, and I finally said, well, I'd like to have something beside these homemade clothes. I'll get some store-bought clothes. So I sacrificed my silver dollar. Wish I still had it, but it went away down the south a long time ago. But anyhow, we went ahead and went to school. And then I wanted to go to high school. And in the beginning of grade school, that year there was 60 kids for a little one-room schoolhouse, and it was too many. You didn't have room to turn around in there. So they borrowed the church there at Goodwater, Missouri. How many's heard of Goodwater, Missouri? Nobody. Okay. I lived at the East End. I went to school at Goodwater, and my address was Good Land. You're shaking your head. Yes, sir. Do you remember that? No. Oh, okay. I appreciate it. But anyhow, that's right. And the reason it was called the East End, it was east end of the old Sligo Railroad track. It come out of Sligo, Missouri, and come in there and picked up timber at the East End. That was the east end of their line, you see. And but it was a very western tip of Iron County. So anyhow, I went to school for 4 years, and needless to say, I got the silver dollar every year. She also promised us if we would study, we could get one of these certificates here. And if you'll want to look after we close here, you can see I got one of them each year along with the silver dollar. And I've kept them through all these years. I'm 80-something years old, and I still have and I'm still proud of them. But anyhow, I went to high school. I asked my dad about going to high school, and he said, "Jim, I don't have any money." if you want to go to high school, you can go, but I don't have no money to. In that day and time, you had to buy the books. You remember that? You had to buy your own books, own clothes, everything. So he said, if you want to go someplace and work and save your money and pay for it, he said, I'll help you. So that's what I did. I went up to Rochelle, Illinois, up near Chicago, well, out closer to Rockford. Some of you might have heard of that. Anyhow, I saved my money. I wouldn't spend a dime on nothing. I wouldn't hardly buy a nickel Coke because that might be cut me short going to high school. So I went ahead and graduated from high school, and it wasn't long after that I got that little notice in the mail. You know where I'm going, don't you? It said, "Dear Mr. Bell, your friends and neighbors have selected you to serve in the armed forces of the United States of America. You will report at the Lone Pine Hotel at Ironton, Missouri, to be sent to St. Louis to be examined to go into the U.S. Army." I memorized that because I wanted to know who my friends and neighbors was. The Heartbreak Ridge at that particular time was going hot and heavy. We was losing a lot of boys on Heartbreak Ridge. That was the Korea conflict. And then, as I went along there, I got drafted. I did get drafted to the Army, and they sent me to Camp Crowder, Missouri. And that's where they cut your hair and give you a shower and all this and that and the other. And the barber would say, "Would you like to keep your hair?" "Oh, yes." He said, "Hold your hands." I stayed there for a while, got processed. They sent me to Fort Leonard Wood. And when a man called out, they fell us all out in formation. How am I running on time? Over?
You got to say then.
Oh, I just got started. Anyhow, I went to Fort Leonard Wood. They fell us all out in formation, and they was calling out the names. John Brown, Fort Riley, Kansas. Bill Jones, Fort Ord, California, and so on. And I thought, oh, call Jim Bell at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Finally, he said, "Jim Bell, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri." I could have kissed him because I was only 80 miles from home. But anyhow, I spent about 2 years there at Fort Leonard Wood. No, 1 year, I'm sorry, about 1 year. In December, Faye and I started talking about getting married. And we decided we would. So I went in to see the captain about getting a leave. Now, if any of you servicemen have been here, you know that that's a no-no. You're not going to pass that first sergeant and get in to see the captain. But I convinced that first sergeant that it was very important that I talk to the captain. And finally, he griped around and he said, "Well, go on back and see him." And I went back and highballed him and said, "Private James E. Bell reporting, sir." And he said, "At ease, Bell, what do you want?" And I said, "Sir, I'd like to have a leave." He said, "A leave?" And he come up he's behind the desk, and he had steel gray blue eyes that looked right straight through you. And he come up out from behind that desk and throwed his hand out, and I thought he was going to lay one on my nose. And they could have done that day and time and got away with it. Anyhow, he said, "At ease, Bell." He said, I can't give you a leave. He said, "But I'm a married man myself, and I have 2 children. But he said, I can't give you a leave. You're classified in training. But he said, I can give you a 3-day pass. And if you need a little more time," he said, "you could always call me." I said, "Thank you, sir." I didn't abuse it. I took a few days over that, but I didn't want to abuse it and go back and him bawl me out. But anyhow, we went ahead and talked about getting married. So we went to Salem, Missouri. That's down near where I live. And in those days, you had to get a blood test. You remember that? Somebody remember that? Yeah. In Missouri. But you didn't have to in the state of Arkansas. So we took the blood test. It was Christmas time. The heavy mail and the blood test papers didn't come back. I had took off another 3-day pass or time. I don't remember now how I got it off. But I was there, and now I don't have no test papers that I can get married. And my brother-in-law was with me, and he said nothing ever fazed him. He said, "Well, why don't we go to Arkansas?" I said, "It sounds good to me. That sounds like a plan." And so we loaded up and went to, left Salem, Missouri, and went to Salem, Arkansas. And pulled up at the front of the courthouse there. And there's an old gentleman farmer standing on the sidewalk. We asked him, could he tell us where the courthouse was? Well, yes, he said, I can. He said, it's right around the bend here. And he said, you can't miss it. He said, I got an idea that you folk are wanting to get married. And I said, yes, sir, that's it. Well, he said, you know, today is a holiday. It was New Year's Day. The blood test papers didn't come back. That fouled us up. Here we're making this trip. And he said, the guy that handles that is out in Colorado, big game hunting. Well, now, something's not right about this picture. Everything's going bad. But he said, let me tell you. He said his wife can fill them papers out. And he said, I'm the pastor here at a church, local church there in town. He said, do you have anybody to perform the ceremony? Do you have a preference? I said, no, sir, I don't. And he said, well, I could do that for you. He said, you go ahead and get the paperwork done. I live exactly 3 miles out of town. He said, you come on out there and I'll take care of it for you. So we went over and got the paperwork done and drove out there, and sure enough, exactly 3 miles, and there he was. We went and knocked on the door. He come to the door, and he looked like a different man. Back in town, he had on rubber boots, bib overalls, and one of them old plaid caps. And when he opened the door, I didn't know it was the same man. He'd went home and showered and put on his suit, and I smelled a fresh cake of bacon in the oven. And so he went ahead and performed the ceremony. My wife had her palm dress with you, didn't you? And that's what she wore, and that's in some of these pictures here. Anyhow, he performed the ceremony and pronounced us man and wife, and he said, now, he said, we're going to have cake and coffee. And she had baked a cake. You could smell it when you opened the door. And I said, sir, how much do I owe you? And he said, oh, I had my uniform on. And I'll get to that in a minute if I have time, a cast up to my knee. And he said, you don't owe me nothing. I said, oh no. And I had just got paid the day before in the Army, and that day and time paid out off in brand new money. I don't know if any veterans here or not, but you got brand new money. So I thought I was really rich. I had a pocket of brand new money. And I give him a $5 bill. I was only making $2 a day, folk. I was 2.5 days for about 15 minutes. But anyhow, that took care of that, and we came back. My wife had rented an apartment in the city, and we come back to the apartment, and that was on New Year's Day. And then I went back to camp. How's my time? Do I? I don't want to bore you. Well, anyhow, throw me out if you want to. That'd be all right. I've been thrown out of better places, I think. We was bivouacked out by Old Baldy. Was any veterans here of Fort Leonard Wood? Yeah. You remember Old Baldy? No? Remember Old Baldy? Old Baldy Mountain. You do.
I was in Leonard Wood. I can't recall all.
Oh, you should have toured around out there and saw the beauty of the country.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he's right on the banks of the Little Piney River. You remember that? Anyhow, we was bivouacked out there, and it was wintertime, and you know how the mud gets soft during the day when the sun is shining, and at night it freezes up. So the next morning when you start walking, you're going up and down in that mud. And the mud was so bad that the company commander sent overshoes out for the troops to wear. And I wore a size 8 boot, and wouldn't you know it, they gave me a pair of 14 overshoes. I looked like Donald Duck walking there in that mud. That's the truth. Okay. I don't think I said anything about breaking my foot, did I? Okay, that's coming. But anyhow, I told the officer that I didn't think I could walk back. It was 8 miles back to camp because something wrong with my foot. And he said, no, you'll make it. You'll make it. Well, I did. And when I got back to camp, I was going to go to dispensary the next morning. Well, I went and looked on the board, on the roster, and they had me scheduled for KP. And I thought, of all times to get KP, and if any of you veterans here, you know that you didn't get out of KP. You had to do it. So I hobbled around on that foot and pulled KP for 14 hours. And the next morning, I went to the dispensary. And the colonel asked me, he said, Bill, what's wrong with you? I said, there's something wrong with my foot. He said, what is it? I said, I don't know. It's all swelled up. He said, pull your boot off and let me look at it. He took one look and he said, make this man an emergency appointment at the hospital right now. And I thought, boy, they're going to have to take my leg off? You know, I didn't know. That sounded bad. But anyhow, I went up there and they x-rayed it. And said, got to put a cast on your leg and it'll be up to your knee. I said, how long is this going to last? Or have to stay on? He said, 4 weeks. Oh, I said, I didn't want to last that long. That'd take me through Christmas. And he said, yeah, it will. But anyhow, we lived in St. Louis when I had time off. And I'd go back, I'd catch the Greyhound bus out of Union Station downtown St. Louis there, bus station. I'd catch the bus there and ride it to Rolla, Missouri. Change buses there and go into Fort Leonard Wood. But when you know, one night it was cold, cloudy, and windy, and I missed the bus. The bus had already left. When the bus out of St. Louis got there, the other bus had been gone 15, 20 minutes. Now I'm in pretty much of a jam because it's getting late. I got to make Reveille sometime. What am I going to do? So I asked this taxi driver, I said, what would you charge me to take me out to the edge of town here on Old Highway 66? And he said $7. I said, man, I ain't got $7. I can't do that. I said, I don't make but $2 a day. I can't pay $7. I said, what do you charge me to take me out the edge of town? He said, 50 cents. I said, let's go. And we got out the edge of town, and them cars just whipping by, and me standing out there in that cold and that wind, a thumbing and trying to get somebody to stop. Nobody would stop. Nobody would give me a lift, give me a ride. So finally, I come up with a plan. I rolled my pants leg on the cast side, where the cast was, all the way up to my knee. So the very next car stopped. And I got out of that cold wind, and he told me to get in. He had an old 40 Ford, and where you lean the seat forward and you crawl in the back. And I got in, and man, the whole back floorboard was full of beer cans. Man, if a trooper stops us, I've had it. I'll be in the brig from now on. We went on down the road there, and we passed the state trooper sitting there on the side of the road. And I thought, oh boy, we was lucky that he wasn't following us. And about that time, here he come. He was right behind us, and he threw that red light on. And I thought, oh my, I don't know what I'm going to do. And anyhow, he pulled us over, and I'm sitting there just shaking, 21 years old, shaking, not knowing what he's going to say. And all he wanted to do had a tail light broke, and the white was shining up in the guy's eyes, and he said, get that fixed the first chance you get. So that let me out pretty easy there. I got home. I got to visit a lot of, I'll cut this short now, folk, if you'll hang with me just a couple more minutes. Going to school was a great thing. I enjoyed going to school, but I didn't go for 8 years for this and 4 years of high school. And then I was very fortunate. The Lord blessed me tremendously. In the Army, I got carpenter school at Fort Leonard Wood. Like I say, I went to Crowder, and then I went to Fort Leonard Wood. They sent me from Fort Leonard Wood down to Camp Chaffee, Arkansas. And he said, don't unpack your duffel bag, Bill. You're not staying here. You're going to Camp Polk, Louisiana. Okay. So they give me money to go to Camp Polk, Louisiana, and I went down there and heard the same story. He said, Bill, don't unpack your duffel bag. You're not staying here. You're going to Fort Belvoir, Virginia. And so I said, well, whatever you say is what I got to do. So I went to Fort Belvoir, Virginia. We had a nice little apartment up there. I lived off post. I had Faye with me all through my Army years. She was with me. I lived off post. And we had an apartment there right in the edge of D.C., well, really over in Virginia. We could walk to the United States Capitol. And every weekend we was fortunate enough and blessed that we could walk and see the Smithsonian, the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, and the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I mean, this is something we'd never thought we'd ever be able to see, and we was here on the government's expense up there going to school, and they do it now all the time. But anyhow, it was a great blessing to be able to do that. And I finally graduated from that engineer mechanic school there in Fort Belvoir, and they said, you're going back to Camp Polk, Louisiana. Okay, that's fine. So they sent me back to Camp Polk, Louisiana, and the sergeant come out and he said, Bell, don't unpack. You're not staying here. Now, where am I going? You're going to Fort Hood, Texas. That sounded good to me. I always wanted to go to Texas as a kid growing up playing cops and robbers, you know, and cowboys and Indians. And here I'm going to get to go to the big state of Texas. She's most of me, my time's run out. I'll pull this. Anyhow, I went to Fort Hood, Texas, and there is where I got discharged in 1954, and came back to St. Louis. And I'll stop there. Do you folk have any questions? Yes, sir. I got the gentleman in the back.
How many silver dollars did that teacher have to give out, and how does she manage that on a teacher's salary?
Sir, I really don't know. The part that I do know, that I got the silver dollar. And I waded the creek and everything to get. The school was about 2.5 miles from our house and down an old road, and I waded the creek and everything else to make sure that I was there. I had a question right here.
Just as one veteran to another, thank you for your service.
More than welcome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it, sir. Yes, sir.
I was thinking, when I was in Fort Leonard Wood, I was in 1967, we stayed in what you call, I think it was a Quonset hut. It was metal on top. Is that the same type that you stayed in?
No, sir. We had the old wooden barracks like you see on Hogan's Heroes. That's what they were. Do I have any more? Any more questions? Anybody got a question? Well, I don't believe I explained it that well, but I'll take it. Okay, let me finish on. I got just about a couple minutes here, and I will be done. I went to auctioneer school back in 1967. I always wanted to be an auctioneer, and I never had the chance to do it. And so I had a business in Arnold, Jim's Bargain Barn. Does anybody remember Jim's Bargain Barn? That was mine. I sold that out, and I went to auctioneer school down in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And I come back, and that's, as the gentleman said about this colonel, and anyhow, that was always my boyhood dream, to be an auctioneer. I went to the cattle auction, and I saw that man sitting up in that little crow's nest, you know, with a big brim hat on, and I wanted to do that. So I went to auctioneer school and come back, and anyhow, I want to say one thing before I quit. You can accomplish anything you want to do if you'll persevere, if you'll try. If you work hard enough, you can get there. My dreams of going to schools was pretty much all fulfilled on the things that I wanted to do. I wanted to be in business for myself, and I wanted to go to auctioneer school. I wanted to get an education, and I stayed with it until I got it. And just to let you know that I did go to school and didn't play hooky, let me give you a little chant, if that's all right. Well, you're mighty quiet. Maybe you don't want to hear it. Hey, well, all right, sir, open the gate, let them out, and welcome, boys. Then lot number 29 are coming in. How many dollars would you give for it? I got 25, they give me $30, $30 now for 35, and now 40, give me $40, would you give $40, boys? Give me 40 and 40, now 5, 45, thank you, sir, glad you come today, and now 50. I'm 45 and now 50, 50, make it even money now 55, 60, now 5, 65 and now 70, 60, give me 70, start, stay with me, and you'll loan it. 70, now 80, 80, now 90, $80, $90, $90, $90, $90, $90, $90, $90, $90, sold down here, it's you. We'll get you something, ma'am.